Hey guys, welcome back. Your storyteller here for another night of accounts that blur the line between comfort and terror. Tonight, I'm bringing you 3 stories that will fundamentally alter how you perceive the space you call home. These aren't tales about abandoned buildings or decrepit mansions. These are experiences from ordinary people in ordinary houses who discovered that safety is sometimes just an illusion we tell ourselves. Before we begin, I need to be clear. These are real events. Names have been changed, minor details adjusted for privacy, but the core of each story remains exactly as it was shared with me. These people lived through something that changed them forever. Quick question before we step inside. Where are you right now? Are you home? Alone? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below. There's something uniquely unsettling about these stories when you're sitting in your own space, surrounded by familiar walls that suddenly don't feel quite as familiar anymore. Alright then, let's begin. Story 1, The Transmission. I'm sharing this account because what happened remains unexplained, and because my friend witnessed part of it in real time. This occurred last winter when I was renting a studio apartment in an older building on the outskirts of the city. The place wasn't anything special. Affordable rent, decent location, thin walls that let you hear your neighbors' conversations if they spoke loud enough. The building had been constructed sometime in the 1970s and it showed. The wiring was outdated, the heating system groaned and clanked at odd hours, and the plumbing made sounds that had no correlation to actual water use. Most residents kept to themselves. In the 6 months I'd lived there, I'd maybe had 3 conversations with neighbors beyond basic greetings. One Thursday night around 11:30 p.m., I video called my friend Michael. We'd been trying to coordinate schedules for weeks and late night calls had become our norm. Neither of us had work the next morning, so we settled in for what we expected would be a long conversation. Michael was calling from his childhood bedroom at his parents' house where he was staying temporarily between apartments. Through the video feed, I could see his old room. Single bed pushed against the wall, a desk cluttered with books and papers, and a tall antique armoire positioned near the door. His parents had bought that armoire at an estate sale when Michael was in middle school. He'd always hated it, said it made the room feel smaller. We talked about nothing important at first. Work frustrations, weekend plans, a movie we'd both watched. About 20 minutes into the call, Michael stopped mid-sentence. His head tilted slightly to the left, like he was trying to hear something distant. "Did you just play something?" he asked. I frowned. "Play what?" "I didn't do anything. Hold on." He went quiet, listening. That's when I heard it too. Through his phone, faint but unmistakable, a sound like humming. Not a mechanical hum from electronics, but actual humming. Soft, almost melodic, but not quite a song I could identify. "You hear that?" Michael's voice was quieter now. "Yeah," I said. "What is that?" "I don't know. It's coming from..." He moved his phone, panning across his room. The humming didn't change in volume or direction. "It's coming from in here. From my room." I watched through my screen as he stood up from his desk chair and moved toward the armoire. The humming continued, steady and unchanging. "Is your TV on?" I asked. "Or a radio or something?" "No. My parents are asleep. There's nothing on in here except my phone." The humming stopped abruptly. We both went silent, waiting. Seconds stretched into a full minute. Neither of us spoke, both of us listening to the emptiness. "Probably just sound traveling weird through the house," Michael finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Old houses do that, right?" "Right," I agreed, trying to sound casual. "Sound does weird things." We resumed our conversation, but the ease was gone. Both of us were distracted, half listening for that sound to return. It did. About 8 minutes later. This time it wasn't humming. This time it was breathing. Long, heavy exhalations. Slow and deliberate. Coming from the same direction as before. Michael stood up so quickly his chair scraped loudly against the floor. The sound echoed through my speakers. He pointed his phone toward the armoire. The door was open. Just slightly, maybe an inch or 2, but it had definitely been closed before. "Michael," I started. "I didn't open it," he said quickly. "I haven't touched it all night." The breathing sound came again. Louder now, or maybe we were just paying more attention. It was rhythmic, purposeful. Michael took a step closer to the armoire, phone extended in front of him like a flashlight. Through my screen I could see into the gap between the doors. The interior looked dark, darker than it should have been. The overhead light in his room was on, should have illuminated at least part of the inside, but it was like the light just stopped at the opening. "Maybe you should..." I began, but I didn't get to finish. The armoire door moved. Swung open another few inches, smooth and silent. That's when my video feed froze. Michael's face was locked on my screen, mouth slightly open, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. The audio cut out a second later. "Michael," I said. "Nothing. Michael." The call disconnected. I immediately tried calling back. It rang once and went to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I sent a text. "Are you okay? What happened?" No response. The message showed as delivered but not read. I paced my small apartment, phone clutched in my hand, debating whether I should call his parents' house phone, or if that would just freak everyone out. I waited, checking my phone every few seconds. 43 minutes later, my phone finally rang. "Michael." "Thank God," I answered. "What the hell happened? Are you?" "I'm in my car," he cut me off. His voice sounded thin, strained. "I'm parked outside the house. I'm not going back in tonight." Through the video call, I could see he was sitting in his parked car, interior light on. His hands were shaking. "What happened after the call dropped?" I asked. He took a breath, seemed to be gathering himself. The door kept opening. After we got disconnected, the armoire door just kept swinging open, slowly. And the inside, it looked wrong. Like it was deeper than it should be. The light from my room wasn't reaching the back wall. It was just dark, like looking into a tunnel. Jesus, Michael. My phone lost signal right after we disconnected. Completely dead. No bars, no Wi-Fi, nothing. And then I heard movement. From inside the armoire. Something was moving in there. My stomach clenched. Moving how? Like fabric brushing against wood. Slow, deliberate. Like someone was shifting position. He paused, swallowed hard. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. I kept my eyes on the armoire the whole time. When I got to the door handle, the sound stopped. Just complete silence. "Did you see anything?" "No. I didn't wait around to see. I left, got in my car, and I've been sitting here trying to process what the hell just happened." I stayed on the phone with him for another hour. We didn't talk much, I just kept him company while he sat in his car in the driveway, both of us trying to rationalize what we'd experienced. The next morning, Michael went back into the house with his father. They inspected the armoire together. Empty. No hidden compartments, no loose panels, no vents or openings that would explain the sounds. The hinges were old but functional. The door didn't swing on its own. His parents suggested he'd been overtired, maybe half asleep without realizing it. Michael didn't argue. Didn't try to explain what we'd both heard, what I'd witnessed through the video call. About a week later, Michael moved his stuff to the guest room down the hall. Said the change of scenery helped him sleep better. No incidents occurred after that. But then, 2 weeks after the room change, his mother mentioned something at breakfast. She'd been hearing strange sounds late at night. Faint sounds coming from Michael's old room. When Michael pressed her about it, she described it as quiet breathing near the closed bedroom door. She thought maybe it was just the house settling or air moving through the vents. But Michael knew better. His parents hired an electrician and a contractor to inspect the house. Both found everything in order. No structural issues, no electrical problems, no explanation for the sounds. Michael still lives there, at least temporarily. The armoire is still in his old room. The door stays closed now. His father installed a small latch to keep it that way. Michael and I don't talk about that night anymore. We've never done another late-night video call. And we both know, without ever saying it out loud, that something was in that armoire. Something that breathed and moved and watched. We just don't know what. Story 2, The Squatter. This account comes from my own experience, and it's the reason I no longer trust old houses, no matter how charming they appear from the outside. When I was 13, my family rented a narrow 3-story house in a neighborhood that was transitioning from working class to gentrified. The house had been built in the early 1900s and showed its age in every creak and groan. It tilted slightly to one side, a product of uneven settling over decades. My parents chose it because the rent was manageable and it was close to my school. I noticed immediately that something was off about the house's layout. There were spaces that didn't quite make sense, areas where walls seemed thicker than they should be, closets that felt too shallow, vents that carried sound in unpredictable ways. The house had 3 floors, a crawl space beneath the stairs, and a converted attic loft that remained unused because of poor insulation and extreme temperature fluctuations. Strange things were constant. Plumbing noises occurred at night even when no water was running. Lights would dim in sequence, starting from the top floor and working their way down. My parents attributed these quirks to outdated electrical systems and aging infrastructure. We learned to live with it. When I was midway through my 13th year, the property owner informed us the house was being sold. We had 60 days to vacate. Packing fell largely to me while my parents worked overtime to secure our next place and save for the move. I started with my bedroom, sorting through years of accumulated belongings. While clearing my closet, I noticed a ceiling panel I'd always assumed was decorative, just part of the original architecture. But when I applied pressure to it, the panel shifted. Using stacked boxes as a makeshift ladder, I pushed the panel aside and pulled myself up into the loft. What I found made my blood run cold. The space was illuminated by several small red bulbs attached along a support beam. They were powered by an extension cord that snaked through a gap in the wall. The loft wasn't abandoned and forgotten. It was occupied. Recent occupation. Insulation had been pulled back and secured with tape to create usable space. A folding cot stood near the center, neatly arranged with blankets and a pillow. A small powered cooler hummed quietly in the corner, plugged in and functioning. Empty water bottles were stacked against one wall. Granola bar wrappers. A battery-powered lantern. Someone had been living here. Recently. Along the far wall were plastic storage containers. One had cracked open and I could see what was inside. Human teeth. Molars, canines, incisors. Some still had fillings. They were stored carefully in small plastic bags, organized by type. I didn't touch them. I barely breathed. Carved into the wooden beams above the cot were markings. Symbols I didn't recognize. Tally marks. And one phrase, carved twice in different locations. I'm still here. I backed toward the opening, moving carefully, trying not to make noise. That's when I heard footsteps. Below me. On the staircase. The footsteps were slow, measured. They climbed from the second floor to the third, then stopped directly beneath my bedroom. Then I heard a voice. My father's voice. Where are you? But my father was at work. I'd been home alone all afternoon. I didn't respond. I stayed completely still, heart hammering against my ribs. The lights in the loft flickered. The extension cord shifted, pulled taut as if someone was tugging on it from the other side of the wall. Movement continued above me for the next hour. Objects being repositioned. The cot creaking under weight. Footsteps pacing back and forth. I stayed in my room, door locked, listening to someone move around in the space directly above my head. Eventually the activity stopped. The next morning I told my mother about the loft. She stared at me for a long moment, then said the ceiling panel had been sealed years ago due to pest concerns. It shouldn't have been accessible. That night I was awakened around 2 a.m. by the sound of the dumbwaiter rope moving. We had an old dumbwaiter system in the walls, a relic from when the house was first built. It hadn't worked in years, but I could hear the rope and pulley system activating, moving upward through the wall cavity. The mechanism stopped at my floor, at my bedroom level. Then I felt pressure from the opposite side of my door. Not knocking, just pressure like someone leaning against it. A red glow appeared beneath the door frame. The same red illumination from those bulbs in the loft. The powered cooler's hum was audible through the floor above me. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. Why are boxes being moved upstairs? It's 2 a.m. I watched in horror as my bedroom door handle slowly turned downward. Above me in my closet, the ceiling panel slid open. The red light beneath my door disappeared. Breathing. Right outside my door. Slow, deliberate breathing. I didn't move. Didn't make a sound. After several minutes, though it felt like hours, the floorboards creaked as footsteps moved away from my door, down the hallway toward the stairs. I waited until I heard nothing. Then I waited longer. When I finally opened my door, the hallway was dark and empty. No red light. No sounds. Nothing appeared disturbed. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning I told my parents everything. My father climbed into the loft to investigate. It was empty. Completely empty. No red lights, no extension cord, no cot, no containers. Just dusty and used space with undisturbed insulation. My account was dismissed as an overactive imagination combined with stress about the move. But there were inconsistencies my parents couldn't explain away. The dumbwaiter rope showed recent wear. Fibers were frayed and discolored from use. An outlet behind the wall in my closet was warm to the touch. The ceiling panel no longer fit properly in its frame. Over the next several days, things went missing. Packed boxes would be opened and resealed with different tape. Food disappeared from the kitchen in consistent amounts. Once, I came home earlier than expected and heard coughing from the loft. The sound stopped the moment I reached the stairs. The situation became unavoidable when our electricity bill arrived. It had doubled from the previous month. An electrician traced the increased load to a concealed junction behind the loft wall. Appliances had been drawing power from that point consistently. He disconnected it and asked if anyone had been accessing the loft space. My parents said no. That night, the disturbances escalated. Plumbing noise increased throughout the house. Doors shifted open and closed. The dumb waiter moved repeatedly, violently, until the rope snapped with a sound like a gunshot. From the loft, we heard something heavy being dragged across the floor toward the ceiling opening. We left before sunrise, grabbed essential belongings and went to a hotel. 2 days later, law enforcement searched the property. What they found confirmed my worst fears. Investigators discovered a concealed passage connecting our house to the adjacent building, constructed with removable panels behind false walls. The passage allowed movement between multiple properties without being seen from the street. The loft showed evidence of repeated occupation over an extended period. Items recovered included medical waste, clothing belonging to multiple different people, notebooks filled with observations about residents' routines, and several containers of extracted human teeth. The individual responsible was never located. An officer told us that unauthorized habitation through shared structures occurs more frequently than people realize. He said the person had likely been observing our daily routines for months, learning our schedules, even imitating our voices to confuse and manipulate. The case was closed without identifying a suspect. The house was renovated months later. The loft was permanently sealed, the concealed passages were walled off, and the property was sold. Online listings for the house no longer showed the original ceiling dimensions. Years later, my father told me something he'd kept to himself. On our final night there, before we officially moved out, he'd returned alone to retrieve some documents we'd left behind. While he was inside, he heard movement above him. When he called out, asking if someone was there, a voice responded from the loft, using his exact words from earlier that day. In his voice, "I still have nightmares about that house. About the sound of breathing outside my door. About that voice calling my name in my father's tone. And sometimes when I'm unpacking after a move, I find items that don't belong to me. A small plastic container. An unmarked folded note." The officer was right. People who live this way rely on routine. They watch, they learn, they wait, and sometimes they follow. Story 3, The Documented Life. This final account comes from someone I went to college with, a woman named Rachel who experienced something that made her question the very concept of privacy and safety. In early October 2 years ago, Rachel moved into a townhouse on the outskirts of a mid-sized college town. The building was older, probably built in the 1950s, with hardwood floors that creaked under normal movement and walls thin enough to hear neighbors' conversations. Rachel was living alone for the first time. Her previous roommate had moved out of state for a job, and Rachel wanted the independence, the quiet space to focus on her graduate work and her remote job as a data analyst. The first 2 nights were uneventful. Standard adjustment period to new sounds, new spaces, new rhythms. The third night changed everything. Rachel woke around 3 a.m. to shadows at the edge of her bedroom. Initially, she assumed it was the coat rack she'd positioned near the foot of her bed, casting strange shapes in the ambient light from the street. But the shadow moved, shifted, in a way that didn't match any stationary object. She stayed still, watching. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she could make out details. The shadow had the shape of a person. Short hair. Clothing that looked like a jacket and jeans. The figure stood near the foot of her bed, turned slightly away, presenting a partial profile. Rachel slowly reached for her phone on the nightstand and activated the flashlight. The figure was gone. Instantly. No sound of movement, no retreating footsteps. Just gone. She convinced herself it was fatigue from unpacking and adjusting to the new space. Sleep deprivation playing tricks on her mind. The next night she woke to tapping. Rhythmic, deliberate tapping coming from her bedroom closet. At first she thought it might be a branch against the window, but the pattern was too consistent, too purposeful. She got out of bed and approached the closet. The tapping stopped as she got close. Then she felt it. A presence directly behind her. No sound, no visual confirmation, but a concentrated cold pressure in close proximity. A faint exhalation like someone breathing out slowly right behind her ear. She spun around. Nothing there. When she turned back to the closet, the door, which had been closed, was now slightly open. Rachel extended her hand toward the gap. As she did, she heard movement inside. A scraping sound like something dragging against the wooden closet floor. The door swung open further on its own. Rachel maintained her position, looking into the dark interior. She could see her clothes hanging, shoes on the floor, storage boxes on the shelf. Everything normal. Everything in place. But she knew something was wrong. She documented everything that night. Wrote down exact times, exact sensations, exact sounds. She checked every window, every lock, every possible entry point. Nothing explained what she'd experienced. The following morning, she left the townhouse to clear her head. When she returned, she conducted a methodical inspection of the entire property. Every door, every window, every potential entry point. The closet remained closed, contents undisturbed. No signs of forced entry or tampering. That night, she slept in the living room with all the lights on. 3 days later, she installed cameras. One in the bedroom, one in the hallway, one covering the front door area. She reviewed footage daily, looking for anything that would explain the sounds, the movements, the presence she'd felt. Nothing appeared on the recordings. But here's what Rachel didn't realize: the cameras couldn't see everything. 2 weeks after installing the cameras, Rachel was reviewing footage from the previous night when she noticed something odd. A timestamp gap. The bedroom camera showed 11:47 p.m., then jumped to 3:23 a.m. Over 3.5 hours were simply missing. She checked the other cameras. Same thing. Identical timestamp gaps across all 3 feeds. The cameras had been powered off, then powered back on. Rachel called the camera company's technical support. They reviewed her system remotely and confirmed someone had accessed the camera controls from within her home network, disabled them for several hours, then reactivated them. But Rachel had been home alone that entire night. She'd been sleeping in the living room 10 feet from her router. The technician suggested changing her Wi-Fi password and enabling 2-factor authentication on her camera system. Rachel did both immediately. That night, she stayed awake. Sat in the living room with her laptop, monitoring the camera feeds in real time. At 2:17 a.m., the bedroom camera shifted slightly. Just a few degrees, like someone had brushed against it. Rachel watched the feed. The angle now showed a portion of the closet that had been previously out of frame. The closet door was open, and inside she could see something that made her stomach drop. A face, partially obscured by hanging clothes but unmistakable. Someone was in her closet looking directly at the camera. Rachel grabbed her phone and ran to her car. She called 911 from the parking lot. Police arrived within 8 minutes. They searched the entire townhouse. Every room, every closet, every possible hiding place. No one was there. But they did find something. In the hallway closet, not her bedroom closet, there was a small access panel in the ceiling. It led to a crawl space that ran above all the units in the building. The access panel had recently been used. Fresh scuff marks on the frame. Disturbed dust around the edges. An officer climbed up to investigate. The crawl space was extensive, running the entire length of the building. And in one section, directly above Rachel's bedroom, they found a sleeping bag, protein bar wrappers, a water bottle, and a tablet device. The tablet was password protected, but the forensics team eventually accessed it. What they found was worse than Rachel could have imagined. The tablet contained thousands of photos and videos. Photos of Rachel in her townhouse, taken from various angles over the course of weeks. Videos of her sleeping, working, eating, moving through her daily routine. There were also detailed notes. Observations about her schedule, her habits, what time she typically went to bed, how long she spent in the shower, what she ate for breakfast. The notes went back 6 weeks, starting from the day she moved in. Most disturbing of all, there were photos taken after she'd installed her cameras. Close-up shots of the cameras themselves, showing their exact positions and fields of view. Notes detailing their blind spots. Whoever had been watching her had adapted to her security measures. The investigation revealed that the crawl space access wasn't just above her unit. It connected to multiple townhouses in the complex. The person could move between units, watching different occupants without ever being seen. But they never found who it was. No fingerprints on the tablet or items in the crawl space. The device had been wiped of any identifying information. The building management sealed all the crawl space access points after that. Added security cameras in common areas. Sent notices to all residents. Rachel moved out immediately. Broke her lease and found an apartment in a newer building, one with limited common spaces and no crawl space access. She told me that for months afterward she felt like she was being watched everywhere she went. In the grocery store, at the coffee shop, walking to her car. That feeling of being observed, documented, studied, it never fully went away. The worst part, she said, wasn't even knowing someone had been watching her. It was not knowing who. Was it another resident in the building? The maintenance worker who'd helped her move her couch? A stranger who'd figured out the access system? She still checks for cameras everywhere she goes now. She covers her laptop camera with tape. She's hyper-aware of access panels, crawl spaces, any area where someone could hide and watch. Because once you know how easily privacy can be violated, how thoroughly someone can document your life without your knowledge, you never feel truly safe again. The case is technically still open, but there are no leads. No arrests. Just an unknown person who spent 6 weeks living in Rachel's ceiling, watching her sleep, learning her routines, collecting information for reasons no one understands. Rachel told me one more detail before we ended our conversation. Something she hasn't told the police because she's not sure it matters, or if it would just make her sound paranoid. Last month, she got a notification from her cloud storage. Someone had tried to access her account from an unknown device. The attempt was blocked by two-factor authentication. The login attempt came from her old address. The townhouse she'd fled 9 months earlier. Someone was still there, still trying to watch. 3 houses. 3 experiences that shattered the illusion of safety. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who shared these accounts. Reliving trauma, especially trauma that violates your sense of security in your own home, requires tremendous courage. Your willingness to share helps others recognize warning signs and trust their instincts when something feels wrong. What these stories teach us is fundamental. The places we retreat to at the end of the day, the spaces we consider most private and most safe, can be compromised in ways we never imagine. Hidden watchers, concealed passages, digital invasions of privacy. These aren't supernatural threats. These are human threats. And that makes them infinitely more terrifying. If something feels wrong about your living space, unexplained sounds, objects out of place, the persistent feeling of being watched, don't dismiss it. Investigate. Ask questions. Trust your instincts. Our minds are remarkably good at detecting patterns and anomalies, even when we can't consciously articulate what's wrong. That feeling of unease exists for a reason. If these 3 accounts resonated with you or made you reconsider your own space, please like this video and subscribe. Share it with someone who might need to hear these stories. And leave a comment. Have you experienced anything similar? Do you feel truly safe where you live? This is your storyteller signing off for tonight. Lock your doors. Check your spaces. Trust your instincts. And remember, home is only safe when you truly know what's inside it and who might be watching. Until the next story finds us.